Hello, everyone! Welcome to the first episode of Casual Chats for 2025. I am Patricia, and I'm here with Aaron Meta from The Aaron Meta Show.
Hey everybody.
And yeah, so we're not out of the winter celebration thing just yet. So today we're going to be talking about the 1999 direct-to-video special Wakko's Wish based off of the 1993 animated series
And
Animaniacs.
by the way, just so people are a bit confused of why you're seeing this now and not at Christmas and seeing that all the Christmas decorations are here, is that we sort of ran out of time to do certain things. So we are now seeing us record this episode in 2024, but technically speaking, this is the first casual chat of 2025. It's confusing.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, if you remember last year, we did a podcast on Animaniacs in honor of the show's 30th anniversary, and now we're going to be talking about the only time in which they've ever done a direct-to-video movie, kind of like similar to what Tiny Toons did, in which they released How I Spent My Summer Vacation. They released Wakko's Wish.
Yeah, and I guess you could say that this sort of counts as like the season finale for Animaniacs. This is like the last thing. I mean, obviously before they did the reboot. I mean, this is sort of the last thing they ever did Animaniacs related for like several decades after that.
Yeah, because as you guys know, that around that time where Animaniacs was just ending its run, that's when they just caught up with everything. So yeah, this was the last thing that they did release. This was like months after the show ended. This was, I think, around the same year that Pinky Elmira and the Brain ended. So yeah, it was actually in that interesting transitional period between the Warner Brothers cartoons and then when Kids WB started focusing a lot more on airing anime or American cartoons or Canadian cartoons that were inspired by Japanese anime.
Yeah, and it just seemed like after Dragon Ball Z and various other anime shows that had come from Japan started to become the main focus of everybody. Also, Pokemon also was a big focus on that as well. I guess Warner Brothers has decided, well, that's what kids want to watch, so here we go. This is we're not really kind of figuring that yeah, it's kind of cool to have anime, but at the same time, we would also like other things as well. So yeah, it got to a bit of an awkward point where it's kind of like, yeah, they sort of kind of like focused on like the one sort of thing and thought, let's make go of it. And,
Yeah,
not a great idea, to be honest with you.
I mean, looking back on it in hindsight, I mean, I understand that for a lot of people who were first introduced to anime, whether it be with Kids WB or even with Toonami, it's like, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity for us to watch something from another country and, seeing an American or North American's interpretation of what that would be in terms of the story. But for an animator's perspective, this is bad news considering that it's a lot cheaper to have something imported from another country as opposed to like, paying animators, voice actors, and artists to do the
But
shows.
on top of that, it's more like the fact that it was, yes, there is this anime genre and this subculture that a good amount of the audience are also invested into, and I get down there this that Crunchyroll and things like that, but this was at a time when anime hadn't really taken a foothold yet. I think in that there were still people who wanted American animation and still wanted the Disney products and the other things that where the animation industry had to offer, and I think that was a blind sight on their part because keep in mind Kids WB did not last much longer after that.
Well, no, it did. It actually lasted all the way up until like the late
Well,
2000s.
yeah, it's like, but well, the late 2000s, yeah, and but where now we get here into 2024, and people are like, Kids WB, oh wow, that was a thing at the time.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was a thing. Yeah. So,
yeah.
to give a refresh for the younger viewers who are interested in learning about Kids WB, so from around the early to mid 90s, all the way up until around maybe 2008 or 2009, you had a lot of cartoons that aired on Kids WB. You had Animaniacs, you had Batman the Animated Series, you had Superman the Animated Series, you had a slew of amazing cartoons that came out during that golden era of animation where, Warner Brothers was at a major kick again, where they started having Tom Ruger, Sherry Stoner, Paul Rugg, and all the other people involved. And they were able to give us gold with a lot of the Spielberg cartoons, Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, Pinky and the Brain, all those
But
cartoons.
it's funny because when you ask people what do I remember the most of Kids WB, those shows that you just mentioned, that's what they say. And so the anime doesn't really kind of focus into it unless you're you've been born a lot later on, and
Yeah, if
then
you're, yeah.
people will say, oh well, that was just part of my diet. I still remember the Nickelodeon shows, the Disney Channel shows, the Fox, even the Fox Kids shows. People still somewhat remember, which was kind of awkward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
when you
is.
think
Yeah, I mean,
about it.
I 1999, around the early 2000s, Fox Kids was a shadow of its former
Exactly,
self.
yeah, and but I mean, the thing is that I think I mean, we're giving you this kind of like this background to let you know, where Animaniacs was at that point
Yeah.
because it was sadly these shows were going out the door, and so I guess that's one of the reasons why Wacko's Wish was direct. I mean, sure, if this is the thing, I'm sure there's some people like only watching the show thinking, "What's Wacko's Wish?" And it's like because they'd never seen the directed video DVD or even the DVD version of this before. So like for them, I think this is probably a bit of a an alien concept of like hey, there was something after Animaniacs, which is sort of kind of like sort of sees as a season finale, like a wrap up if you will of the not a wrap up of the series, but like the one last thing they could do before obviously things were all said and done.
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
again, this
So
came
yeah.
out 20 years after, no, 21 years after the reboot.
Yeah, I mean, now it's out on streaming and stuff like that, so people will be aware of it now. I mean, a lot after Animaniacs, his original run was done. So, I mean, obviously there's people out there, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who would have, probably, unless they'd, seen it in the video store or had been heard, had heard of it, they'd, they probably never even heard about this.
Yeah, and
So,
I think it also has since been overshadowed with Tiny Toons' first direct-to-video movie, which was
now I
how I.
spent my vacation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot more people know about that as opposed to Wacko's Wish. And yeah, I
Well, to
would
be fair, I mean, I don't know about you, but you know how I spent my vacation. I actually got a TV run here in here in the UK. So
yeah,
I don't know if it did in the US or
it
not.
did.
It did. Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, well, yeah. Now the video's begun is a bit of a bit of another great term to use. I think the very beginning of that. So
Yeah, because if you rent it on YouTube and they say now the video's begun, it literally is a YouTube
your
vid.
video, yeah. So in that context, it makes sense. Hey, maybe they want to do something about like this video thing. I, mean, I don't know, but it's kind of funny because how I spent my vacation on the VHS tape, and they said, "Oh, now the video's begun." Then it went onto TV because people wanted to watch it, and on TV, and then later on became it became on streaming. So now it became a streaming video
Yeah.
effectively. So it became relevant again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Anyway, so
we're giving you kind of like the background of where we were, with Wacko's Wish. So, again, like I'd never seen this. You'd seen it before I'd seen it. So,
yes.
like, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And yeah, so yeah, this is a very interesting, comedic musical, pretty much. And so, I mean, tell you what, shall I give you the floor to tell us what happens in Wacko's Wish?
Sure,
And
why
yeah,
not? But we have the Warner brother and Warner sister once again, and they're living in this small town that is filled with hope and everything is happy. And then, of course, you have Ticktockia basically taking over with this evil king and basically like taxing everybody. And then everything is in complete despair. Everybody is poor. Everybody is miserable. And then you have Wakko, Yakko, and Dot, who are orphans and are living in this orphanage. It's been run down, and Dot is needing an operation, and Wakko decides that he's going to leave so that he can be able to make money to save up for his sister's operation. He comes back 1 year later and gets a far penny. And no, now he needs to pay taxes, and so
it was a hay penny
oh, it's a hay
actually,
penny.
hay
Yeah,
penny,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's a hay penny. So
Oh boy, and do they make a massive deal of this hay penny?
yeah,
Like,
there's a song
yeah,
number about
there's
it.
a song number about it. Yeah, in fact, that's one thing I do like about this is that they actually make a lot of song numbers about. This reminds me of What's Opera Arnold. Like, do you remember, like, they did a whole like thing with Carmen, but they like mixed up the words to like say like, hi, I'm Carmen, I'm awfully charming,
Yes.
and everything like that. Like, and so that's what happens here in this. They take some classical songs and some other like opera numbers, and they basically mix their own words into it and make it really funny.
I mean, they've done that in Animaniacs in the past, where if you remember the episode Les Miserables is basically Les Miserables. And,
Hmm.
we even talked about in the second episode of Animaniacs where they sung the monkey song, and that was from Harry Belafonte's monkey song. So,
Yeah.
in addition to like their original songs like, Wacko's World and Yakko's World, Wacko's America, I'm Mad, I'm Cute, and all those other songs, they do tend to mix up classic songs and put them into the Animaniacs twist. And, major shout outs to Randy Rogel, who's able to do that. And also, major shout out to a lot of the other composers. Like there was also Stephen Stone, and there was also Stephen Julie Bernson. This was actually Stephen Stone's last time that he ever composed for anything because he passed away shortly after the movie came out.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, he was essentially like that generation's Carl Stalling, where he was able to compose a lot of the music for Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, all those songs. And, something like that hadn't been done since Looney Tunes. And so, for this being his last project, I think it was a nice one to go out on.
It definitely was, and so I like the whole setup of it. Like where this is like a poor village, like in the middle of a nation that has basically been overtaken by like this evil king, and
Yeah, and we know what the context of that was.
yeah, it is, and so, but I like the way that Yakko, Wakko, and Dot are played off as like these orphans that actually like they were in this orphanage and now been kicked out of the orphanage and now they're outside the orphanage. Like how worse can this get for them, effectively? And then so Wakko goes out, into the world, and then comes back with this haypenny, and so then obviously he gets taxed, for the haypenny, and then Wakko looks at the stars and effectively does the whole Disney princess thing of like, I really wish I had a, I was wishing onto a star. And so then a star falls down from the sky and lands, miles away, and so they then have to go off and find this wish.
Yeah, and
And
the and there's
not before telling every single character on the show about it, and then basically we have effectively this it's a mad, 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 mad world, parody that's kind of going on with like everyone trying to go chase off after this wish, and actually it's the great thing about it is that people aren't just going off for the wish for like any particular like oh I'm just going to go off for it because that's my character trope. No, that's not it. Like you've got Dr. Zashnichev and and the nurse we're going off because they want to sell better elixirs, and they want to do that. And then you've got Slappy and
Skippy.
Skippy Squirrel going out because they want some they've run out of their tree has stopped producing acorns and they want it to produce acorns again, so that's what they want to wish for. So every character who's going out there has a reason to go out there because they feel that somewhere if they get this wish it's going to make their lives a lot better.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's interesting because the way that they did it, you're obviously rooting for Wakko the entire time because everything that happens to his Haypenny and everything like that. But you're it would have been great if you could try to find a way to make the other characters plight just as sympathetic as Wakko's is. But I mean, obviously, Wakko, Yakko, and Dot are the main focus of this. So in a way, I mean, I know how effective they try to make it, but everyone's kind of gets get it shoved to the side a little bit, really. And like Yakko, Wakko, and Dot ends up kind of like being the main focus of this. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously so. I'm not saying that. I'm not just trying to discount them anywhere in this story, but you kind of feel like as the way they try to make this, where it's everybody needs to be it needs to be sympathized with because of the situation that they find themselves in. It's they kind of get a bit lost in the shuffle really because you're mainly focusing on Wakko because he's got the most in a way to lose because he's the one who asked for the wish, and now he's potentially going to lose it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So
And don't forget that Dot is sick and needs the
there's
operation.
that too as well.
Yeah, and I mean, again, very similar to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Everybody who wants the money needs it for a reason. Some people need it so that they can be able to pay off debt. Some people need it so they can start a new life. Some people need it for a fresh start. So,
Well, I think if you compare it to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, I mean, everyone's kind of using it for selfish reasons. Everyone here sort of has a legitimate reason to have a wish,
yeah,
in a way. So I kind of sympathize with everybody who's going after this more than I do than the characters in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
fair enough. Yeah.
So there's that.
I mean, I guess except for Pinky and the Brain, they just want to use it for world domination.
Oh yeah, there's that. So yeah, well I guess again, like I didn't say everybody has has a sympathetic thing in this, but yeah. But anyway, the majority of people do. So, anyway, I do apologize. I lost my last thought that I
yeah,
had on this.
yeah,
And,
you were talking about that everybody was needing the wish, and Wacko has a lot more to lose.
yeah, exactly. And so, there was, yeah, so Wakko, obviously, with Dot's operation, I think we've already covered that already. And, but I think the way that the music is done, and the way the animation is done, and so there was one awkward moment in regards to the animation. Did you notice, actually, they decided to use some 3D technology in the story? story element when you had Yakko telling the story to Dot about about the princess story,
Yeah.
which I'm like where you see this like kind of like this 3D thing. It kind of doesn't really mold into like the rest of
No,
the animation. Like
no,
it's just
it feels out of place. It's not like,
yeah.
yeah, here
Why did they do that?
I don't. I think they were trying to build it for dramatic reasons. It's here's a good example of this is
They should have played it off for laughs. Like, they should have like, oh hey, Yakuza, oh hey, we've somehow entered into the dimension or something like that. They should have made like some kind of like gag out of it, but they didn't. It's kind of
no,
like it's just kind of there, and it's kind of like just goes away again. It's like, huh,
yeah,
like my eyes deceive.
yeah. There's been several attempts in that them trying to do this for an animated show, and it works. Like when Sprig and Anne say goodbye to each other in Amphibia, and when Steven finds his inner self in Steven Universe, and there's a lot of other examples of that where
Well,
it's
there's the bit in the Owl House where the animation kind of ramps up, and it's like where you get action sequences or you get emotional moments and or things like that. But those things blend into the episode or they go into the moment because they're there for that reason. And so, but and don't get me wrong, I think the obviously they towards the end of the movie. By the way, we're going into spoilers with this, are we
yeah.
not?
Let's do that. Yeah,
So I mean, it's a 20-something-year-old direct to DVD video.
yeah,
Thing.
so yeah, go watch it on YouTube. You can rent it for a couple of dollars, or you can buy the DVD for pretty low price. So yeah, I think the reason why they did this was because Dot is dying, and
Yeah.
they're too late
Well, at
to
one point they thought she was dead. At one point it was in the final third. We thought she died.
yeah.
At one point, which like. By the way, the Dot death quote unquote scene is actually quite emotional because like they tell the story again, and everybody's like it's just teary eyed. Like it's almost on par with like I wouldn't say it's exactly on par with like when Ash got turned into stone in like the Pokemon movie, but it's sort of there, isn't it? Like
Mm.
it's a really it's a real tearjerker. Like this is a comedy. Like this they're doing this for laughs. But it's kind of like oh my god, like dying or whatever. Like it's really the one thing that Animaniacs does so well in this is the storytelling. The storytelling is so solid, and like the callbacks to like early events in the movie, like what we're talking about before, where Dot is dying in the snow and Yakko is like telling the story again, and you can tell there's an emotion because this is the last time that she's gonna be able to do it. Oh my god, it's so good
Yeah.
and everything like that. And it's funny that because like Wakko goes towards the witch and it's like, oh yeah, but it's to bring Dot back, but then you find out Dot's fine anyway. So he's like, all right, then well, what did Yakko wish for? And then you find out it's a second haypenny that he's. He's got two of them.
Yes.
Yeah, like there's like wow, like inflation does not exist in this world. So yeah, and with those two halfpennies, Wakko, I should say, just he manages basically the operation. He manages to like do, basically revitalize the economy effectively of this nation.
Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
he spends one hay penny on the operation, another hay penny on a bunch of baked goods, and then it's able to continue on and on and on.
And on, yeah, and effectively the the economy effectively comes back into that, and the king is no more, and
Yeah, and by the way, the king is just so stereotypically over the top. It's ridiculous.
yeah, like it's the one thing I was like, I thought that they would have done more with the king, really, but if anything, he's just kind of like he's like every other Animaniacs villain that we've come across, like in the show. Which I
Yeah.
mean, I guess you could say if for a send off, I guess maybe that is, but it would have been interesting if it was like if they did something a bit different with it, where instead of like him just being part of the gag, maybe he isn't, maybe he is just like this like, this stuck up really cold king, but if anything, like he is part of like just the gag routine that the Warner Brothers and the Warner sister are sort of known for, if
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
and for those who don't understand the reference to Ticktockia and this king taking over everything. So, Time Warner. So, as you guys know, Ted Turner basically like took a lot of properties along with him around that time period. And so, as you guys know, that Warner Brothers had purchased Time Warner at the time. And so, basically, there was this huge merger that happened. And so, they're basically making a joke about, like, oh, yeah, here we go. We have this huge merger that's happening and it's going to be taking over everything. And people are going to be left poor. And, the major, person in charge of the merger becomes rich. Gee, that hasn't aged one bit.
No, it has not at all. So, Just so yeah, I mean, obviously there's that, but I mean, obviously that flies over the heads of all the kids who are watching it, really.
Yeah,
So
of
yeah,
course, yeah.
exactly. But I mean, yeah, but moving that commentary aside, I mean, there's the fact that you have just another villain, and I gotta be honest with you, I mean, when you really look at it, I mean, does the king really stand out from like every other villain that we've had, like in Animaniacs?
No.
No, he doesn't.
No, I
I
mean
think that's
he's
his problem.
yeah, I think he's just similar to all the other villains that Yakko, Wacko, and Dob just poke a whole bunch of jokes at.
Yeah.
Like it
The one thing I thought was pretty interesting is that, the king is so desperate to have this wish, and but then he realizes, but then they points out, like, well, what's he actually going to wish for? And he's kind of like, huh. It's like, I thought so hard and so long to, and put so much resource into actually getting this wish. He's never actually thought about what he's actually going to do with it. So he's stumped.
Mhm.
And so, if anything, like that's a really good plot device, to buy time, and to make sure that he wastes it. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like, that's a great part of, like, of the movie. Like, he's like his king, like, he's fought so hard to get this wish, but then realized he doesn't know what he wants to wish for.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also the fact that Yakko, Wacko, and Dot decide to trick him by saying you have to be really specific about the wish, otherwise you're going to get something that you didn't really
Oh yeah,
want.
they do this bit where it's like, oh yeah, we know everything about the wish, so obviously that's to stop them from dying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So
So when
I
you
guess that's one thing. I think that's a bit like the stakes. I think are a bit higher in this special than they are, like, in the typical episode of Animaniacs, really.
yeah, I
So
mean because
yeah,
Yakko, Wacko, and Dot they just goof around. I mean, there's
yeah.
not really much of a stake with them anyway.
Yeah, it's not like they're painting naked people in the 16th chapel, is it? It's like, it's just this. In regards to this particular villain, I mean, I've got to be honest. I mean, they tried their best, I think, to put the stakes a bit higher, like we were saying before. But he's a dime a dozen in regards to, like, the whole Animaniac show. Like, he's just another villain,
Yeah.
effectively. There's nothing really special about him, if anything. So
Yeah. And again, there's a bit of an imbalance with the characters. Like, I mean, sure, you're gonna have Yakko, Wacko, and Dot as like the main focus, but then you have all the other characters just thrown in. You have obviously Dr. Scratch and Sniff and Hello Nurse. You're gonna have Pinky and the Brain. You're gonna have Mindy and Buttons. You're gonna have the Good Feathers. You're going to have Rita and Runt. You and yeah, and then you have all
And
the
in
other.
a way, some of them are kind of like being added too late because, like, the good feathers were only kind of like thrown in as, like, pretty much like, the monkeys from Wizard of Oz, if you will, to, like, trying to stop them from, like, getting the wish and everything. But it's like, it's like, and then there's Mindy and Buttons as well, and, like, they're sort of kind of like, thrown to the side, if anything.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean I
yeah,
mean they weren't even supposed to be part of the whole chase in the first
no,
place.
they weren't.
I mean, it's just that Mindy saw, Slappy and Skippy, and she's like, "Ooh, I want to chase after them." And then Buttons goes after her, which I guess is consistent with the shorts that they're a part
Well,
of.
there was some character development, I guess, with Mindy because she finally called her mom mommy finally
Yeah,
instead of lady.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
so I guess.
one thing that actually
Yeah,
happened.
that's one thing. Finally, there. Oh, hey, here's some character development in the entire animated show. Too bad it's in the director DVD special and the last ever thing that they ever did. Oh well.
Yeah. And I guess Buttons, finally was able to get his reward in the end. So yeah, he didn't have to like deal with a whole bunch of pain and misery.
Yeah, like but it's in regards to, like, the way that they did this as, like, the big hurrah. And by the way, they have the big musical number at the end, and they have the wheel. They also brought back the wheel of morality for it as well, because that's just been, like, a hilarious thing that we've had throughout the show. Because
Yes.
obviously we need to have, like, some kind of, like, moral lesson, and but the one thing I'll say is that for an Animaniacs tribute, I would say that they nailed every single little bit of it. I think that they did that very, very well. In regards to it, like, being, if you're a massive Animaniacs fan,
Hmm.
and but you've seen, like, here's the thing about this, and this might be a very cruel critique, and tell me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
but I feel like, besides the big story that we have throughout this, and just, the way that they tried to make it a bit bigger than your usual, like, episode of Animaniacs. I mean, it's, there's nothing really to the formula is still the same. The formula hasn't changed, and I think that probably goes against it in a way, because
Yeah.
I feel like they don't really take, besides, some of the things that happen in the final third. I mean, like, you're pretty much, like, you're sitting down for, like, a normal, afternoon of Animaniacs, if you will.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Whereas
really special, like, that's going to, come flying at you.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas in Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, it takes place in summer. They're not at the university anymore. And you get to focus on all the characters characters in their adventures. Buster and Babs are sailing through the river. Plucky, Hampton, and the family are going over to
Happy World Land.
yeah, Happy World Land. You have Fifi LaFume, who wants to meet up with the celebrity who continuously
Yeah, Johnny
stands.
Pugh.
Yeah, Johnny Pugh, who stands her off. Shirley the Loom and Fowler are going out on a date to the movie theaters. I mean, yeah, you have all these stories that are happening in between.
Yeah, and but whether it's like you're basically just involved in the chase. And I mean, you were talking before about how I spent my summer vacation, kind of like overshadows Wakko's wish, and you can sort of see why, because you really all you're doing is like you're just like basically involved in the chase, and you everyone's kind of like chasing after the same thing, if you will, and whether is in how I spent my summer vacation, everyone's got different goals.
Yeah,
Like
everybody has
yeah,
different goals, and it's all taking place on the
it's more
same summer.
it's got more variety, I
Yeah,
think.
you have a lot more variety. You have the thrill of the river. You have the wackiness of a road trip. You have the on and off romance of Fowler and with Shirley the Loon. You have the rejection of Fifi. You have Elmira going after all the animals and acting crazy. So, yeah, there's variety in the storytelling. And remember, it's all taking place in one summer. Now, again, that's to his advantage because in Tiny Toons, we focus on the wacky adventures of all the different characters, and they're taking place in the school. They're not taking place in the school because it's summertime. Whereas here in Animaniacs, yes, they all have the same goal, and you have different characters chasing after the same goal, but you get more focus on Yakko, Wakko, and Dot than all the others. I mean, you have what? Scratch and Sniff and the nurse who want to use it for their better elixirs. Pinky and the Brain want to use it for world domination. The Good Feathers want to be able to not be taken over by the king. The king wants to use it for who knows what reason other than just world domination. Um,
In a
Rita.
way, Biggie and the Brain and the King have the same objectives.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes, they have the same objectives. Sure, and yeah, Rita and Runt want to be able to use it because they're just
And if anything, Weeder and Runt basically just kind of like I said, just slapped onto like the Doctor snatching thieves and the Hello Nurse story pretty much like that they pretty much get their story is pretty much intertwined.
yes, and Mindy and Buttons are intertwined in there as well because they
Yeah.
they end up in the same caravan.
Yeah, I mean that. If I was aware, that never happened in How I Spent My Summer Vacation. Everyone kind of was kept separately until they finally came back from summer vacation.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there have been some exceptions. I mean, you do get to see like some moments in which they do intertwine, like for maybe like a quick second. It's like, oh, I forgot that this story is happening in between this one. Kind of like
Yeah, but they don't really interact for example, like you've got Fifi LaFew, and then all of a sudden Elmira will just come into the scene saying, "I want a kitty, I want a kitty," but it doesn't actually interact with anyone else
no,
within that segment. No.
no, not at all. And then we have Elmira's parents driving to the road after they're done with the zoo, and they just crash into Hampton and his family and Plucky Duck, and we never get to see them interact again.
Exactly, yeah. But even then, like it's not even like his garage. It's basically just like a mild, not a mild, I would say,
Like
but
a massive turn.
like a massive turbulence, if anything. So
Yes.
but they don't interact with one another.
No, they don't.
No, exactly. So whether is this, I think they should have found a way to kind of keep everyone kind of linear, if you will, and they kind of go for their own character evolution, in his own. You can't say that they didn't have the opportunity to do that. I mean, they could have done some kind of interaction with Minnie and Buttons. They could have done some further interaction with the Good Feathers. They could have done some interaction with between Doctor Draston and Hello Nurse, and do some more character study with that. And because not everyone's traveling out on their own. I mean, they got a companion with one another, so they could probably get a conversation going, learn a bit more about each other, things like that. They could have done more with that, but they didn't.
No.
It's just about the wish. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, we did get to see, in addition to Scratch and Sniff and Hello Nurse, and you have Mindy and Buttons and Rita and Runt in the same caravan. You have the Good Feathers crashing into Pinky and the Brain's flying machine. But again, they don't interact with each other. They just crash into one another.
I mean, I guess as it was coming towards the end of the second act, I guess there was a reason to do it because obviously they needed to get it to a point where you're gonna get. It kind of makes me wonder what was going on during story, when they were going brainstorming through story, because I'm pretty sure they must have got to that point. It's like, okay, we've got to find a way to bring it all together, and so instead of trying to bring it together in the final third, which I think they should have done, in my opinion, having it all separately and then get into each other in the final third. Someone's going to get the wish. Wakko gets it. done. Like instead, like they kind of like wanted to like condense it before then, and so like you had the Good Feathers and Pinky and the Brain coming together. You had Minnie and Buttons and Doctor Scratch and Sniff and Hello Nurse and
Rita.
Minnie and Rita and all coming together. For that bit, and but and then you had like this interaction between the king's minions and Yakko Wakko and Dot and things like that. So I mean, they had no. It kind of makes me wonder, like they had no other way to like keep them all separate, and then finally have them all come clash at the final third because it would have been one. I think it would have been funnier, and two, I think they would have been a lot more desperation. I think amongst the groups because they've been at these times all separated from one another, agonizing about this wish and having like these these discussions about it amongst themselves. And then they finally get to the wish, and like those conversations that could have been have now are going to come to some kind of climax, if you will. And so I think it was a missed opportunity to do that, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah,
So.
definitely see where you're coming from, especially since, again, How I Spent My Summer Vacation was able to do that and much better. Where again, every single character in that story was able to have their own adventure, and it all took the course of 3 months and being able to have different types of variety of all of these events that are happening. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like a grand adventure when you look into, oh, here's 3 months, go do something crazy, as opposed to like, here's a star, go chase after it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it just feels like there should have been more development with the characters if you would have done that. It felt like it should have been more higher in the stakes if you would have done that. But no, I mean, everybody eventually just clashing with one another. The king captures all of them, sends them over to prison, and then Yakko, Wakko, and Dot are being sorted out because they know the secrets of the wish, and then the king reveals that he was the one putting Yakko, Wakko, and Dot in the orphanage in the first place because they are the true heirs to the kingdom.
Mhm.
And so he wanted to take it over, and so he decided to do away with them.
And by the way, we sort of like find out what, like, I guess you could say we find out what Yakko, Wacko, and Dot's parents were, I guess, which is kind of like, yeah. I mean, it's what they sort of look like, I guess. Unless they just did it for laughs, I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because we know the origins of Yakko and Wacko and Dot. They were creations based off of the 1930s Termite Terrorist cartoons. Then they got too crazy. They locked them up in the tower for 60 years. And then afterwards, they were finally set free. And yeah, I think that, very similar to like a Looney Tunes cartoon, I think this is just like one of the storytellings of these characters, not like canon.
I guess.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, I guess some other things I want to mention is that there are some things that actually did reminded me of How I Spent My Summer Vacation. Like the Yakko, Wacko, and Dot actually go into a cart, and they are actually able to interact with a lot of the things that are happening, very similar to, It's a Small World from Disney World. Instead of a shopping mall, we have Mr. Director, which makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and yeah, that was that segment. Like, they were doing that basically to torture them, which I think was hilarious, and in that instance. So, but again, like it kind of just goes towards once again, like it was great to go like have that distraction, I think, from that, but then obviously, unfortunately, you have to go back to the king. So,
Yeah, and again, the reason why that in How I Spent My Summer Vacation worked is because that's actually the climax of the movie.
mhm.
And then they made that joke about the plot hole, which was able to save them and get them back to Acme Acres. So again, that was actually done much clever than, say, with Wacko's Wish, in which is like, oh, I'm going to use this to torture you so you can tell me how to get the wish done right. And so they were tortured, and then, that was pretty much done. That's
Yeah.
it.
So I mean, it's funny because as we're not trying to be like hypercritical about this, but like, don't get me wrong, like Wacko's Wish is somewhat is still somewhat fun to watch, and I do I really like that Patricia introduced this to me, like when I'd never really seen it before.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say about it is that unfortunately, it's not how I spent my vacation.
That's true. It's not how I spent my summer vacation. I mean, I think at that point, I think the writing was starting to become a little bit tired.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think is in that case, I think they could sort of knew that the writing was on the wall at that point, and Animaniacs was definitely coming to an end. And in fact, the original show one had coming to an end, and this
Yeah,
was so special that they were going to do to wrap everything up.
yeah. I mean, the only thing that was going on was Pinky Elmira and the Brain.
Well, and the less we say about that, the better.
Yeah, I
But
know. I know we have to talk about it at some point.
I mean, we will, but hopefully not not for a very long time.
No, not for a very long time because we still have three other Steven Spielberg cartoons to go
Yeah.
over.
But anyway, I mean, like, I'm pretty much those are my thoughts, right now. So, I mean, if you want, we can score this thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
So, I would say, I mean, here's the thing about this. I've been very critical about it, but I'm going to be honest with you. As a send-off, I think to the original run of Animaniacs, I think in regards to the songs, I think in regards to the fact that we get to see all the characters again, I think the fact that we have the emotional moment at the very end of the end of the special. I mean, it's a solid 8, I would say. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's where I stand with it.
Yeah, I would say maybe 7.5 for me, where I give Tiny Toon Adventures How I Spent My Summer Vacation a much higher score because I think that that was a tighter story. It was a lot more of a fun adventure. And I've even told you this before and even mentioned this in the podcast that I've seen How I Spent My Summer Vacation every summer for the past 30 years. I never miss it. And so as for Wacko's Wish, I don't see it very often. Maybe I'll see it every once in a while during the winter time, but How I Spent My Summer Vacation is a movie that gets better and better every time that you watch it because it is just so funny. It also stands on its own. Like, you don't need to be familiar with Tiny Toon Adventures in order for you to watch it. And I guess for Animaniacs, maybe you kind of maybe have to be familiar with some of the characters, maybe not all of them. I mean, like, I think the whole Mindy and Buttons thing would make a lot of sense if you were to like watch Wacko's Wish on its own. I think you need to like be a little bit familiar with like the shorts as in addition to like all the other stuff, but I think it's okay on its own, but I think you really need to like see the show in order for you to get the context of everything. But yeah, I would give that an 8 because I do enjoy the music, the animation. I do enjoy all the characters. I mean, this is essentially like the last time that we'll get to see them for another 21 years. I mean, actually, most of them because like the Good Feathers are gone, Mindy and Buttons are gone, Rita and Runt are gone. I mean, the only ones who are still around in the reboot are Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, Pinky and the Brain, and I think they're I think that Slappy Squirrel and Skippy show up, but I think they show up like towards the end. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, let's be honest. I mean, like the big two things. I mean, the breakout stars of Animaniacs were Yakko, Wacko, Dot themselves and Pinky and the Brain. They were
yeah,
like they're the reason why we've got there is a reason why Pinky and Brain got their own show.
yes.
At the end of the day, they were the breakout stars out of Animaniacs.
Exactly, yeah. So it makes a lot of sense that they were the ones who would come back for the reboot and not the other ones. And you know what? To be quite honest, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's our discussion for Wacko's Wish. So please let us know in the comments below about what your thoughts of Wacko's Wish are. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you just think it was okay? And what did you think of this movie compared to how I spent my summer vacation? And yeah, we got a lot of cool things coming up. So hope that you'll be able to stay tuned for that. But until then, take care, everyone.
Yeah. And the moral of this episode is don't eat yellow snow.
You said that last time. What's your other moral?
Don't eat yellow snow.
Okay, good night, everybody.